Alaskans and the contributions Alaska Native peoples make to our community and society today. We would especially acknowledge the traditional importance of the area considered for this downtown plan and for the Ship Creek as the traditional first salmon ceremony site. Thank you.
Thank you.
So what are we going to do today? We're going to talk about why we're here. Christine will make that a little bit clearer. I want you to introduce yourselves as people who will gather a little bit, at least a couple more times in the future. We'll do a brief project overview, and then because you are all downtown experts, we'll do a deeper dive, deeper than we would normally get, and then have discussion about that, okay? That's what we're gonna get through in 90 minutes. We have a lot to get through. Please keep your microphone muted. You will have the opportunity to provide comments, ask questions, and engage in discussion at specific times during the presentation. So please don't interrupt the presenter, but we have times throughout the presentation for you to talk and ask questions, okay? Use the raise hand feature and I'll make sure everybody can participate. I don't have the chat set up so that you can engage with each other. Sometimes that's a little bit distracting. You can chat with me if you need something. But other than that, we're not going to be monitoring chat. But if you need something specific, I'm here for you, okay? Also, keep in mind this meeting and the chat, the private chat that comes to me, it's all being recorded. So just so you know that. All right, thank you for dealing with the nuts and bolts very much. I'm going to pass it off to Christine now.
All right, thank you, Holly. And thank you all the stakeholders that are here today. We really appreciate your time. I'm going to introduce the planning team and the consultant team, and then I'll talk a little bit about the purpose of the stakeholder group. So the planning team is myself, Michelle McNulty, Carol Wong, and Tom Davis. And then our consultant team is Holly and Michelle with Huddle, and then Shanna with Agnew Beck. The purpose of the stakeholder group is to provide guidance to staff and the planning team throughout this planning process. We would hope that you would be able to attend stakeholder meetings that we intend to be very focused. So focused discussions, and we're hoping that our downtown agency partners are participating in that. Also downtown businesses and property owners, the Downtown Community Council. We'll probably have 3 to 4 large meetings over the course of the planning process, which will go through the entire 2021. We'll ask you to review and comment on specific elements of the 2007 plan and then what comes from that with this process. We want you to give us your comments and direction on that updated language. So a lot of you are proposed implementers in the downtown plan. So ACDA, Anchorage Economic Development Corporation, ADP. So we want you to take a look at Chapter 8 of the plan, see where you're an implementer, and let's have a discussion about that as we go through this process. We may need you, or we hope that you'd reach out to elected officials, whether that's state or local, and let them know that you support our planning process. And if there's things that you think we're missing, be sure and let us know about that. We may also ask you, like I mentioned just a second ago, to participate in some subject matter subcommittee meetings, or ask that we are allowed to use your boards or committees to assist us with focused discussions. And that could be economic development, land use, transportation. If you take a look at the plan and the different elements that are in the plan, you'll see that we may need a little bit more focused discussion. We want to make sure that we capture the issues and provide the resolutions this plan update needs to move it forward, so that we can work on step 3 after the plan is adopted. And I'm going to hand it back to Holly right now.
Okay, I understand that this can be a little painful, but I think it's important. And I know a lot of you already know each other, but I want you to introduce yourself and I want you to keep it brief. I want you to say who you are, the organization that you represent, and maybe 2 other words or 3, like I'm a property owner, or I live downtown, or I run an organization downtown, and that's it, okay? Because we need to get through it quickly, and I will call on you to do that. All right, we're gonna start with whoever's logged on as ACDA Easy Park, because this is like one of the reasons we're doing it. Okay, there you are. And yeah, and the last thing is turn on your camera if you choose at that time so we can see you. Okay, go ahead, Andrew.
Hi, my name is Andrew Hauker. I'm the Executive Director of the Anchorage Community Development Authority.
Thank you. We'll go to Amanda next.
Amanda Moser, Anchorage Downtown Partnership, and my 2 words are 3, clean, safe, and vital.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to Bill Pop next, please. Okay, we're gonna skip Bill Pop. We're gonna go to Bryce.
Oh, shoot.
No, okay, go ahead, Bill. I was just gonna make a joke about you not paying attention.
Yeah, I was in a hurry. I had to duck out of the room and then I got back and I didn't get ready. And that's my long, sad story.
Okay, that's all the
Bill
words you
Pop,
get.
Yeah,
No,
Bill Pop, President and CEO, Anchorage Economic Development Corporation. 3 words, live, work, and play. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, Bryce, we're up to you next.
Hi, Bryce Klug, RAM Architects and Commissioner on the Historic Preservation Commission and lifelong Alaskan.
Thank you. Jason.
Jason Motika, 49th State Brewing Company, business owner, property owner, and also the treasurer of the Downtown Community Council. Looking forward to creating more access in the downtown area.
Dale, you're up.
Hi, Dale Smythe. I'm an architect at Bettisworth North, but I'm also a South Addition resident interested in a vital downtown Anchorage where I can stay and raise my family. Thanks.
Derek.
Eric Chang, PG Investments, property owner and developer.
Eric, you're up.
Eric Rittner, real estate solutions broker, own and manage multiple downtown properties, and I sit on the ADP board.
The person logged on is Fairview Community Council.
Alan Kipling, President, Fairview Community Council.
Okay. Jeff.
Hi, Jeff Cable. I'm a senior manager of construction for Cook Inlet Housing Authority.
Hello. Jack.
Hey, Jack Bonney. I'm at Visit Anchorage. I'm the Director of Community Engagement.
Jim. Jim Kubitz.
Yes, Jim Kubitz, Vice President of Real Estate for the Alaska Railroad Corporation. You know, working on redeveloping Ship Creek for my entire career down there. Good news is 2 of our millennial children are now homeowners downtown and are very excited about participating in the growth of downtown.
Julie.
Hi, Julie Soppy, CEO Visit Anchorage, run an organization downtown, also a South Addition resident, excited about the process. Thank you.
Jim McKenzie.
Hi, folks. Jim McKenzie, NeighborWorks Alaska. We have 2 properties downtown and are happy to be part of the meeting.
Kamu.
Hello, Kamu Kakizaki. I'm the board president of the Alaska Design Forum. I'm also an architect with Explore Design, and I am a millennial looking forward to a positive future Anchorage.
Lakita.
Hi, I'm Laquita Chmielowski. I'm the land use planning manager with Dow.
Lauren.
Hi, I'm Lauren Mason. I'm a graduate student working with Northern Compass Group.
Melinda.
Looks like my video's been muted. Oh. Hi, I'm Melinda Gant from Anchorage Community Development Authority. We have 2 departments. We manage parking in downtown. under Easy Park, and we are a redevelopment agency for the agency. And we've got 2 active downtown projects, 6th Avenue and 8th and K. Paul.
Go ahead, Paul. Okay, we're gonna move on to Ryan.
Hi, I'm Ryan Watterson. I'm with Watterson Construction Company. We are a commercial general contractor and looking forward to some more projects downtown.
Shauna.
Hi, everybody. I'm Shauna Toma. I'm the Vice President of Northern Compass Group. I work downtown and have for my whole career, and I'm also invested in property downtown.
Sean.
Hello, I'm Sean Debenham Properties. I'm a developer, and we're developing 60 units of housing downtown this summer. So,
Sylvia.
Hello, my name is Sylvia. I am the Executive Director of the Alaska Hospitality Retailers. I'm also the President of Downtown Community Council, and I live, work, and play downtown. Looking forward to this project. Thank you.
Okay, Tyler, you're last.
Hey, Tyler Robinson, Cook Inlet Housing. We have about 78 new units for us in downtown Anchorage, as well as unfortunately some vacant retail space. My 3 words are make it simpler, please, my 4th.
Okay, and we had one person log on. Laurel, can you just please introduce yourself and just say who you are and 2 words about yourself?
Sure.
No context, sorry.
Oh, hi, I'm Laurel. I told Christine I'm not sure I belong in this group because we are not really part of the downtown area, but my sister and I own a new apartment building on the end of 9th Avenue. And so we just thought we'd jump in and see how we can help out with this committee.
It's perfect that you're here. Thank you, Laurel.
Sure.
Okay, thank you for doing that, everybody. It provides context for a group that will meet a few more times in the future. So back to Christine, go ahead.
All right, thank you, everybody. Okay, so we are in our downtown step 2. The proposed timeline is right there in front of you. And then you've got kind of a little bit of an explanation of what a 10-year targeted review is. And then we're going to talk a little bit about progress and confirmation. So AMC 2103.070B-2.2 explains what a targeted plan review is. And it's done in 10-year intervals. And it's to be done in conjunction with an area-wide rezoning in order to make it consistent with the economic and demographic trends, recent and proposed land use decisions, and adopted studies and plans. And we're going to be talking about economic and demographics in this meeting that we have today, recent and proposed land use decisions, and adopted studies and plans. So our downtown step 2 is a very targeted review of the downtown comprehensive plan. We're not blowing open the plan and making a whole new plan. It's a targeted review of an existing plan that we have that's been working pretty well for us. So we're kicking off here in January of 2021. Just so you know, step 1 has already happened. So it's a 3-step process. Step 1 kicked off in 2019. And that was a reformat of the old downtown zoning districts into current Title 21 code. That's been done, that's been adopted by the Assembly. There's going to be a step 3 after step 2, and I'll talk a little bit about that later, and that's related to the code too. So our proposed timeline is we're kicking off this week. We're going to have a community meeting tonight. We'll have another community meeting in March. We hope to have a public review draft plan in August, and then community meeting number 3 in August, and then hopefully go to the Planning and Zoning Commission in November, and next February to the Assembly for adoption. We will be having virtual open houses and website activities throughout this entire process, And again, as I mentioned further, we're probably going to reach out to you guys and form a few subcommittees, because there's more goals and recommendations buried in the plan that we need to talk about and have you guys provide input for us. So a targeted plan review, like I said, it looks at economics and demographics. Agnew, Beck, Shanna's going to talk about their pro forma a little bit. We're going to talk about some of the land use decisions that have occurred over the last 13 years, some plans and studies that have been adopted. We're going to look at Chapter 8 and what's been implemented. And I'm kind of giving you, we'll do a little bit more of the step 1, what happened during that time. We have a lot of progress, and you'll see that in this plan. And we've developed several maps to kind of show you guys what all that means. We're going to talk about the 2007 vision today. We're going to talk about the overarching goals. We're going to talk about the strategy framework, and then proposed study area boundary. And then there's our website at the bottom there on that slide. Okay, next slide, Holly. So success stories. So what's been happening? A lot of you were at our Smart Growth America workshop a few years ago. And out of that, we got a recommendation from Smart Growth America. They said concentrate on a specific area and focus that effort and see if you can get some development in there, see if you can get some art in there, see if you can make it more walkable. And so that's what we did. And so that area is between 9th Avenue and 5th, and we've got a map for that we'll show you. And then it's between I and L. And so what came in, well, we got Elizabeth Place. We're getting the block 96 flats, and some property that real estate owns. They're working on some brownfield evaluations right now on 3 lots in there for some proposed new development. What else has happened? The downtown edge with the railroad, the projects that Cook Inlet Housing Authority has brought in, Conchi Place. I don't know if I said that right, Tyler, sorry. We've had the museum renovations, and we now have this design district declaration. I don't know if I need to read through all of these for you guys, if you could look through them real quickly. ACDA is working on the transit center. But I have to tell you, this is a big list of different things that have happened in the last 13 years that have been accomplished that were identified in this plan. And I think that, yeah, things have been slow and maybe we haven't done as much as we think we should have, but I just have to tell you that we have done a lot. And in Chapter 8, in the implementation actions, there's about 57 actions in there. A few of those have multiple projects in there. And our next slide is going to just kind of talk a little bit about that. Of those, yeah, okay, great. Of those 57 actions, 14 or about 25% have been completed. 17 or around 29% received little or no action. And then 27 or 46% of those action items are ongoing or they're receiving action right now. And I think that's pretty exciting for us. So what's been done? We've done step 1, which was the downtown code. I apologize, I should say reformat in there and not update. ACVB and AEDC has their recruitment and branding programs. Park planning projects have been done and improvements have been made. 9th Avenue was reconstructed. Transit studies have been done. We've got new routes downtown. We've got some parking projects that were done. The railroad terminal was renovated. The Ship Creek Trail, part of that was done. And we've got the Denina Convention Center. So what's ongoing? We've got some housing and business development that's ongoing. We've got tourism outreach that is an ongoing project for us, historic preservation. Things are happening for 4th Avenue, ADP and their park and event offerings and their safety and security programs. And then the projects with little or no action are some of the catalytic or opportunity sites, because those are going to take big investments. The street conversions, most of those haven't been done, bicycle and pedestrian improvements, and then we haven't done the wayfinding or the interpretive kiosks. So a little bit about the demographics. So in 2007, our population in the downtown area was estimated at close to 1,900 people, 1894, and that came from the 2002 census. And the population was projected to increase to a little bit over 4,600 residents by 2025. And that increase was predicted on the additional housing that could have been developed by 2025. So Census Tract 11 is where those estimates came from. And right now in 2019, Census Tract 11 had 895 residents. Sean is going to make a little bit of a presentation. That number is a little bit different. But anyway, we have a fewer residents than we thought we were going to have. So jobs right now, if you guys listened to Bill's presentation yesterday from AEDC, it's hard to determine exactly what's going on right now, but in 2007, the downtown plan stated that there were close to 17,000 jobs in the 99501 zip code, and that includes more than Census Tract 11. It includes parts of Fairview, South Addition, Government Hill. I talked to Bill the other day and I said, can you give me a little bit of an estimate now what you think is in downtown? And again, with everything that's going on with the pandemic, we're just making a rough estimate that maybe there's around 21,000 jobs in 99501.
Okay, this is the first time I want to pause. We're about to start going deeper into the demographics and economics. But I want to pause right now, see if anybody has anything to ask or anything to say. Okay. Shanna.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm Shanna Zespan with Agnew Beck Consulting. And I was asked to share some of the data and information that we put together, gosh, a little over a year ago, sort of pre-COVID, on the residential market here in downtown. And we focused on the residential market and not in any way to diminish or reduce the need to think about the commercial side, but really intentionally to think about, what's going on with building housing, what can we expect in terms of demographics as we become more urban in terms of more housing in our downtown, with the idea that housing is a key driver for the commercial activity as well. One of our first research questions was really how much housing is there? We had heard different folks sharing different numbers on the amount of housing, and there are multiple data sources out there. So we were trying to come up with a good estimate of that. And then we really wanted to compare a bit to some other communities, and that's always tricky for Alaskans to do, but it's also really important to sort of put our data into context. We specifically chose the communities that are listed on the screen because they were smaller communities that weren't super urban, but had been focused on building out more housing in the last decade or so. And Oklahoma City was one that many folks had studied, so we wanted to take a look at that one as well. And then I'll just share a couple of slides at the end on the feasibility issues related to building housing, as well as some solutions that we've already implemented and that we're working to implement. Just one note on geography, this is focused on Census Tract 11, which almost aligns with the core of downtown in the downtown plan. Doesn't fully encompass the full downtown boundary, but again, we were trying to look at statistics and data that reflected that core part of downtown. Next slide. As a follow-up to what Christine said, this gives you a sense of the different data sources for Tract 11, the downtown core. for the population, we kind of just went with an average between the census data and the Department of Labor. Roughly 800 people live in Tract 11, the core of downtown now. Housing units, we actually pulled data from the assessor in the appraisal system and kind of counted up those units, and it was roughly 614. We rounded down to 600. So, you know, I think one of the things that's important when you look at our downtown and the density of people per acre, so we're roughly a little less than 3 people per acre. And of the comparison communities we're looking at, they average around 10 people per acre. So still a ways to go in terms of kind of building out the population in our downtown to reach that sort of critical mass. Next slide, Holly. This is a map I think Christine will talk more about later, but gives you that scope of what Tract 11 is. And when we talk about those 600 units, some people ask, well, which projects are those? And you know, some of them are older buildings built in the 1950s. You know, Elizabeth Place, Conchi Place are not included in those estimates because they were not built in terms of the population before the census, but they're included in this map as well. This slide here just gives you a sense of what most people already know. There hasn't been a lot of activity in the last 20 years. Again, this is census data, so it's not picking up the 2 newer housing projects built since 2014. But really, you know, we've done roughly 11% of our housing built since 2000. Oklahoma City's built almost 80% of their housing downtown since 2000. Salt Lake City, 51%. And Minneapolis and Boise, roughly 1/3 of their housing built in the last 20 years. So, you know, so while there's been some recent progress, definitely been slower to build housing in our downtown community. This here gives you the monthly housing cost in Tract 11. You know, 84% of households pay less than $1,500 a month in rent in downtown Anchorage. We have some housing that is over $2,000 per month. But this plays into the numbers when we run the pro forma in terms of thinking through, you know, how much rent can you secure in a new project, even if it does have a new construction element to it. Next slide. We're going to send out a replacement for this if you do want to take a look. I apologize that the legend doesn't match the colors in the pie charts. But the big key takeaway is that we do have a really diverse downtown. You know, we have, as a percentage of the total population, the least amount of individuals who identify as white alone. And then the 24% is the Alaska Native population in our downtown. Comparing that to some of the other communities, you know, Boise being the least diverse downtown of all of the comparison communities. So that's really exciting. It's something to build from, and it's also something to think about when we do our planning activities and our outreach. The population by age group is interesting. We're not too far off track from the benchmark communities in terms of the 65 and older population, but we are lower than compared to most communities when we look at that 20 to 34-year-old age group. You know, and considerably lower than Oklahoma City or Salt Lake City or Minneapolis. So, you know, again, it's the idea of how are we attracting and retaining the younger workforce and providing opportunities for housing and activity in downtown Anchorage. The median age, though, has dropped from about age 40 to 37 since 2010. So that's indicating that we are kind of shifting to a younger population, which is exciting. For household income, you know, what's interesting is we are kind of fairly well distributed across sort of lower income up to upper income. When you look at some of the comparison communities, we're maybe more similar to Minneapolis in that respect. But we do have a fairly high percentage of the households in that group making less than $25,000 per year as well. You know, vehicle ownership is really interesting. The dark magenta is that no vehicles available. And so we're at 22%, which is, you know, on the, I would say the higher end of the comparison communities. But when you add up the rest of those bars, we're really at around 80% of households having at least one car in our downtown, which really isn't that different than the comparison communities. You know, I looked up downtown Portland and they were more like 54% had at least one car. And I just think this is important because a lot of the conversations around development, new housing, and new projects in a downtown centers on parking. And each developer or landowner, I think, has a different sense of what's needed to park their projects. But the facts are that, you know, the majority of households still have at least one car. So finding ways to ensure parking is super important. But then also building out the downtown to allow for the active transportation and walking, because there is a higher percentage of households in downtowns that don't have any cars. So next slide. Okay, this is a summary, just one slide of the financial feasibility analysis that we've done in a few different projects. This was one where we actually looked at sites across the community, and downtown was one of them. These are all hypothetical sites. There's no detailed architectural plan or not even a specific parcel in mind, but really just looking at what would the feasibility of a project be for a half-acre site with 40 units, and how would that measure up? The total development costs that we're using here are roughly $251 per square foot. This is just numbers based on case studies that we've looked at, and there's examples that I have that are lower than this. There's examples that are higher, and then the rents here are, roughly, close to $2 a square foot. In this model, we looked at information from Alaska Housing Finance Corporation's most recent rental survey and did add about a 20 to 30% premium for the new construction. So the short answer is that, we're looking at a project that costs roughly $10 million to build and to buy the land and do all the design. And then the rents that can be derived after you pay operating expenses is roughly $350,000. And when we sort of capitalize that rental stream, we run into about a $4 to $5 million value to the overall project. So we're generating only about 50% of the value that project compared to how much the project costs to build. And so that just makes it tough for folks to proceed with a development project knowing that feasibility issue exists. In this example, we were trying to toggle the tax incentive and see how that could work. And so in downtown, it's exciting to know that we have that 12-year housing tax incentive, which really does help with these pro formas. The magnitude of that assistance really depends on the project and the developer. But for the most part, on average, I'd say it helps kind of get rid of roughly half of that gap, but doesn't totally take you all the way there. So I think, people have seen this information before. It's probably a little bit tiresome, but I think it's also really important to continue to emphasize that it's not easy to build housing in downtown Anchorage or in lots of parts of Anchorage. And we continue to try to do this in an environment where there are financial feasibility limitations. This is just a graphic that kind of helps illustrate how to bring the tools we have access to today to the table to really influence project financial feasibility. I want to highlight that doesn't include other elements of project feasibility, which could include, seismic issues, design issues, development code elements. But for projects that have that part figured out, how can we take them over the finish line and get them to pencil? So sometimes it's bringing all of these tools together. Again, we've brought that downtown housing tax incentive for 12 years, to Anchorage, which is awesome. In instances where land is made available by public or quasi-public agencies at reduced costs or at long-term financing, that can really help. To the extent that we come up with creative parking solutions or ways to address parking needs, that really does help. The bottom two circles are in some ways more about, the developers' ideas and how they can help improve feasibility. So, it's matching some of the financial winners with financial losers, if you will. So how can you add elements to a project that help compensate for some of, you know, the limitations on the housing. Maybe it's a hotel mixed with housing, for example. And then the bottom left circle is kind of a catch-all for trying to figure out how do we add to the pie of gap financing that can help make these projects happen. Is there tools out there through our state financing agencies that we can improve on and bring to bear to help, you know, meet that requirement where you're only able to achieve a certain amount of the project cost from debt? And, you know, what are the ways that we can bring that forward? So anyway, those are some of the things that folks have been working towards, and some of the ways that we've been able to get some projects moving. And it's exciting to kind of lay that out and then think about the next steps as it relates to this plan update. So thank you.
Okay, there was a lot there, and I want to stop now. You have to have questions, or you have to want to talk about something. This is your chance.
I have a question.
Yep.
So limiting the analysis to Census Tract 11 seems to be, I'm not sure if that's, you know, matches reality. Because certainly one of the things that we've noticed is that in our West Fairview, which is in Census Tract 10, we've had a number of new, you know, residential units go in, particularly along 10th Avenue, east of Cordova. And, you know, when we talk to the, you know, homeowners and says, what attracted you? Says, well, I like being downtown. So this notion of what constitutes downtown is, I think that the way that this is structured, it's an arbitrary administrative boundary. And in reality, how people perceive downtown is proximity and the geographical area. How close are they? And so I would just encourage, as the project moves forward, for folks to be thinking about, you know, is this really our downtown? Or as Anchorage has expanded throughout the Anchorage Bow, shouldn't our concept of downtown expand out also? Because I think the reality is that it effectively it has.
Okay. I think that Christine, I think I'm going to have wait for you to answer that later. We're going to get into that a little bit later in the presentation. But it's a good point. Thank you. We're going to go to Bill Pop next.
Yeah, thanks, Holly. I just wanted to ask a little bit about the financial modeling, just one of the sensitivity pieces on the financial model that you developed. In evaluating other communities that we've seen a core downtown revitalization that has brought hundreds and thousands of people into a downtown that was previously desolate, like Oklahoma City or Cleveland, or even some of the other smaller cities that we've looked at, although Oklahoma City is a bit of an analogy for us in terms of the footprint that they deal with. One of the things that we've seen developers bring up is the tiered levels of values of the housing within the development. Top floors bringing top dollars, middle floors bringing in middle dollars, and lower floors bringing in lower floor dollars, which brings a tiered view to mind. And with a nuance that many of them talked about the fact that they were positioning themselves for the baby boom retirement generation that was keenly interested in downtown as a walkable place to downsize into. I'm interested to know if there was any price sensitivity taken into account in terms of the development, or was it kind of a broad brushstroke? This is going to be the general average price for the building. It's just, I know it's not going to bridge this gap, but it definitely could have some influence on getting us there in terms of just taking into account what developers might want to do with downtown development.
Totally. No, I think, I mean, For this particular model, we were adding a premium, a kind of across the board for all the unit sizes, studio 1 and 2 bedroom. But in interviews with developers and even in downtown who are thinking of properties kind of closer to the edge where the views are better, you know, their return levels could be higher. They could get closer to that higher level rents and a higher premium for sure.
Yeah, because it was very clearly the upper floors, they were focusing on retirees and late career professionals who were at their peak earning years. And then in the middle and lower floors, they were focusing on young professionals, and then even in some cases, the service sector that needs to be supported in downtown housing with workforce affordable housing. So just something I wanted to understand in the modeling. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Go ahead,
I
Jason.
wouldn't mind commenting on that.
Go ahead, Laurel. Go ahead, Laurel, and then we'll get to Jason.
Oh, okay, thank you. For our apartment building downtown, that's exactly how we marketed it and that tier approach. So I appreciate his thought on that. That's exactly what we have found out to be working.
Cool. Okay, Jason, you're up.
I had a quick question regarding, has there been any research or data related to tourism, and specifically tourism rentals like Airbnb or VRBO as it relates to downtown? In other cities, you know, you're seeing a spike in housing being specifically related to the tourism aspect and the rental market. Specifically, downtown Anchorage, I think, has a high opportunity to, you know, utilize, you know, Airbnb rental. So I didn't know if there was any data that you could provide on that for Anchorage specifically. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, I have the same sense that you do, that there's an opportunity there. I haven't done any deep dive into that. I don't know if there's others on the phone.
I guess.
Yeah.
Can I ask the planning department does the planning department have anything in the works? Recent discussions with Girdwood. Girdwood has similar questions, right? Anything in the works from the planning department?
And the thought might be, my understanding is that Airbnb pays taxes directly to municipalities. So the question would be, do they have locations of those taxes of where they're being paid? And is there a way to quantify that for the downtown area? So that would be a question that maybe you might be able to ask.
And this is Julie. I'll jump in just for a moment, and I don't probably have quite what Jason was asking, but I can tell you, you know, Airbnbs, when they started paying the bed taxes here in Anchorage, it was a significant jump, and I can pull the numbers, but of course it was all of Anchorage. I think you're right that there would be a demand for downtown. And it was interesting that Girdwood came up right on top of that question, because they are having concerns now about too many Airbnbs, and, you know, the owners are not there, and there's concerns. There had been up until 2020 concerns about how to manage the Airbnb situation in Girdwood, because they felt that the folks using the Airbnbs were not being as respectful to the community as they had wanted. So I think Airbnbs as part of the downtown mix would need a little bit of management, and I can pull the information on citywide, but not, you know, downtown only, or even by neighborhood of what Airbnbs contribute. They contribute the 12% directly to the city in the bed tax. And then of course, they're also paying property taxes.
This is Michelle McNulty. I can chime in on what the planning department is, kind of the deep dive question.
Go for it.
I don't know. Okay, so just the short answer is specifically to, you know, Julie just hit it on the nail on the hammer, or the hammer on the nail with the Girdwood situation. We're not necessarily doing a deep dive for Anchorage, but Julie, I do appreciate that you're able to pull those numbers, and would love to be able to get some of those from you. We are looking at the Girdwood example right now. And so currently Title 21 doesn't regulate bed and breakfast or short-term rentals from the B&B or from the VRBO model. It's a tax base. We just look at them as residential units. It's definitely something that could possibly be explored as part of this plan of how to capitalize that. But Julie's spot on that Girdwood's market has been saturated. So we are actually looking and working with the Girdwood Land Use Committee and Board of Supervisors if there's a way to kind of help regulate some of the offsite impacts. Specifically in Girdwood, it's the parking issue.
And I would say, outside of the parking, I think the benefits far outweigh the negatives as far as having those people and those units in the downtown area. So I think it's something obviously needs further discussion, but I appreciate your responses. Thank you so much.
All right, any other discussion or questions on the demographics and market analysis? If not, we'll move on. There'll be more opportunities to talk in the future, obviously. Okay. Christine.
Great questions. Thank you, everybody, for that. Okay, so we developed a trends report, which has a lot more detailed information in it, and it is on the ourdowntownaNchorage.com website for you guys to take a look at. I think we sent you in your meeting invitation, we might even attached a copy of it. And we'd love for you to take a look at it because there is more information in there, as well as kind of a narrative analysis on, potentially why things are happening the way that they are. So to kick off this part of the planning process, we did develop several maps for step 2. And while this particular map was not developed for step 2, it was developed basically during step 1, we wanted to have an evaluation of the taxable value per acre by parcel within the municipality, because we wanted to show for the Our Downtown project, how does downtown really contribute to the help managing and providing services for the entire municipality. And those giant red and dark orange spikes are the taxes that folks pay in downtown. And so that depicts quite a bit of the assessment rate for downtown and how downtown really helps the rest of the Anchorage area. So let's go to the next one. Okay, so map 2 in the trends report is this existing housing unit map. And Alan, you did bring up a good point about including more of Fairview, and we'll talk a little bit about that with map number 6. So with this map, we just wanted to show the housing units that Shanna had included in her residential market study for us. And there is a couple of housing units, McKinley Tower, I think, and maybe one other that's outside of the Census Tract 11 boundary. But this just gives you a little bit of an overview of those housing units. All right. Map 3 is our economic development opportunities map. And this provides the boundaries of all the opportunity zones and the tax abatement zones. So the light blue that you see there is the housing incentive that we passed by the assembly. That kind of T-shaped shaded one is the Fairview East Downtown tax abatement zone area. And then in the background, you'll see green. That is the historic preservation plan, the original neighborhood's historic preservation plan, and it identifies tax incentives in there, federal historic tax incentive, and I think there's a couple of other ones in that plan. And then we also have the federal economic opportunity zones, and we wanted to show those on this map. So in the downtown area, East Downtown, Ship Creek area, over into Fairview, we do have a lot of opportunity for incentives in this area of downtown. All right. The next one is, this is map 4 in the trends report, and that's just the existing downtown zoning districts right now. So you've got B2A, which is the central core, which is the yellow color. You've got the B2B, which is the green, and then the B2C, which is the central business periphery. And then the purple on there is PLI, which is covers some park area and then some property that ACDA owns right now. We talked a little bit earlier about smart growth coming to Anchorage and a few good blocks. And so I wanted to show you where the few good blocks are and what's coming in there. Again, Elizabeth Place is within the few good blocks concentration area. And then the new Block 96 Flats project is coming in there. Like I said, real estate department has a phase 1 and phase 2 brownfield project that I think they're doing. And then we have had some proposals for the DHHS site, building site there. I don't know exactly what's happening with those right now, but we did get some proposals on that over the last couple of years. We do have the Few Good Blocks report that will be posted on the project website too. So please be sure and take a look at that. All right, map 6. This is where we need your comment. This is the proposed study area boundary. And as you can see, it is a little bit different than the 2007 plan. So the yellow line is what they used in 2007. And then the burgundy line is where we're going all the way across on 10th Avenue and then down over to Ingra and picking up some industrial properties there in the Ship Creek area, and then going up and picking up that southern portion of the Ship Creek area and the boat launch. So we would need your comment on this boundary, this study area boundary. Do we need to make it a little bit larger? Is it okay the way that it is right now? If you guys could let us know that. All right.
So do you want to talk about that right now, Christine? Do you want input on that?
We could, because we've got another little break here.
Yeah. So I think that's a specific targeted question right now is, what do you think about the project area? And maybe we'll go to Bill first, and maybe Alan, you want to weigh in a little bit more, but go ahead, Bill.
This is a historic question in terms of past planning efforts. During the Sullivan administration, AEDC was directed to oversee the development of an updated Ship Creek Basin redevelopment plan. How does this interact with that plan when you are now extending down into areas that go past the outer boundaries of that plan? And is there going to be any potential conflict with that plan? I'm not married to that plan. It was what we were asked to do and directed to do. But I'm just trying to understand what the implications are if we're going to stretch the boundaries of downtown study over into a significant portion of the footprint that was covered under that plan.
Go ahead, Christine, and then we'll go to Dale.
Sure. Okay. Good question, Bill. Me personally, I think the Ship Creek Framework Plan was an awesome plan. And I think in the long run, because it did come after when the 2007 plan was adopted, I think that we need to be sure and consider some of the projects and proposals that were in that plan that could potentially be included in our targeted review of the downtown plan.
Go ahead, Dale.
All right, sorry about that delay. So sort of on Alan's deal, I understand you have to set a boundary. I was just curious if you guys, if someone could speak to where the boundary, the decisions for making the boundaries we see came from. Is there some relationship to zoning, some other thing that actually drove this, and what the potential effects are in moving it? If you start branching into other blocks, specifically, you could look at Coastal Place to the page left, and the reason for that, the park strip kind of makes sense. Anyways, all four, any kind of input on how they ended up that way and what potential effects of moving them there are. Thanks.
Go ahead, Christine.
Thanks. Good question, Dale. So with this boundary, and you saw the map, map number 3, the economic development opportunities map. you can see how the Fairview East Downtown Tax Abatement District comes over that far into Fairview. You can see how the federal opportunity zones are up in the Ship Creek area. So what we wanted to do with this proposed enlarging the boundary is include those, definitely those two economic development opportunity things that could be incorporated into more planning projects or more implementation that would come from this plan. So that is one of the main reasons that we extended the boundary over. We definitely wanted to include the Gamble Street corridor, commercial corridor. And if you're familiar with the Fairview neighborhood plan, there's quite a bit of proposal of redevelopment along Gamble Street. So we felt that that was important. And, you know, basically that's it, to get those incentive zones in and to be sure and include the Gamble Street corridor. And then the other thing too is we included industrial zoned properties that we hadn't included before. And that's not saying that we will touch those with this plan or anything like that. It's just, it just kind of made more sense to bring it across.
Michelle, do you have more to add to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think it may be worth just maybe for clarification that we're really just talking about extending the study area boundary, not necessarily what we have identified as the core downtown district. And that just by extending the study area doesn't necessarily mean that those adjacent areas are going to be rezoned. I think it just more helps us look at how some of those key adjacent industrial areas like Ship Creek and the Ship Creek plan tie into the core downtown district. That's not to say that it might be appropriate to extend the core district to some properties and rezone them to downtown, but it wouldn't mean that for all of the properties encompassed.
Thanks.
Thanks, Michelle.
So on this issue, if I may,
okay,
go for it.
It's the question is really, okay, for the downtown and with people, what do they feel is, you know, the downtown, and what is their sense of whether or not they are located downtown? And a lot of times, from my conversations with folks is how easy it is to walk there. And so, I mean, our typical walking pace is 3 miles, you know, an hour. And so, if you were to look at someone saying, in 10 minutes I can be, you know, in this space, right? Then that's a half a mile. So if you want to talk about study area boundary, it would seem to me that from this major area of density that we're kind of looking at as traditionally being, you know, the concept of downtown, then what within, you know, that a half mile radius, right, which is a 10-minute walk of that, is that's kind of would be a logical metric, it would seem to me, to be a boundary area for this. Throw that out for consideration.
Thanks, Alan. Bryce, did you have some input? Or are you good?
Well, just a quick thought. I noticed, you know, there's been housing redevelopment, higher density, just south of 10th Avenue, these two projects recently, and I think just some in Bootlegger. So, you know, does that, I mean, there's obviously there's demand being met for housing downtown, and that's the perception that people are living downtown, even if they're slightly outside this boundary. So I don't know if it, you know, helps us to understand a big picture if we include that, or whether we do want to kind of focus inner part of downtown because that's where we really want the housing to increase. So just a thought there.
Go ahead, Christine, if you want to respond or think about it. It's an interesting thought.
Well, and maybe Michelle wants to jump in here too. You're right. New development coming in along 10th Avenue has been providing housing for folks that do work in downtown. We know that. I don't know. Michelle, what do you think on that one?
I think it's a great question. I think, this is why we're bringing kind of this map and this question to the larger group, is for that input. So I think it's something that we consider and maybe ask to the broader community. But I think there's a lot of merit to that.
Okay, we'll do that. So just so you all know, you were invited to the stakeholder meeting, which is right now. There's a technical advisory committee meeting tomorrow, which is mostly with Muni staff, but tonight is the public meeting, and we'll be making this same presentation to the public tonight and asking them the same questions. So we can share what you all said today at that public meeting tonight, and then the technical advisory committee meeting tomorrow too.
Can I ask one quick question?
I have a question too.
Well, Julie first, and then whoever said that second. Go ahead, Julie.
Thanks. I just need a reminder with the tax abatement program that got put in place. Was that just Tract 11? Was that just what's been the historical downtown?
It's broader than Tract 11.
Yeah, so the blue, all the blue that you see is basically well, no, that includes part of South Edition too. We do have a different map that we're going to look at in a couple of minutes that shows what the downtown core is. And that's on page 33 of the downtown plan. If you have a chance to take a look at that, but we're going to see that in a minute.
But Christine, this color though, this is the map that shows what qualifies for the tax abatement, correct?
Yeah, the housing incentive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good, Julie. All right. Okay, who? Oh, go ahead, Laurel.
It's Laurel from Susitna Flats. I guess my question is, if you're looking at housing and how that influences downtown, I question why you're not wanting to know what's in Bootleggers Cove. You've got several different new buildings down there, including ours and Coastal Place, and I forget what they call the one down by the railroad tracks, O Place. So why is that not something you want to study, the density population in Bootleggers Cove?
Go ahead, Shanna.
Yeah, I mean, I think these are all great questions, and everybody's sort of teasing out the idea of like, what are boundaries for purposes of market study? What are boundaries for purposes of development and zoning code? And what are boundaries for purposes of broader policy directive? For market study, you all are absolutely right. I mean, we could for sure pull in like adjacent neighborhoods to downtowns. And I think each of our case studies has that as well, right? I mean, we kind of zoomed in on their maps and looked at their census tracts and their downtowns and really tried to pull the cores together so that we could do apples to apples comparisons. But looking at the adjacent neighborhoods, both, to the east and to the west and to some extent to the south, helps really, if you're a private investor, understand kind of what you're working with and what opportunities there are. But for the benchmarking, we just chose to kind of keep it more concentrated. But when thinking about, private investment projects, it is nice to kind of look at that secondary market as well, for sure.
All right.
I have a question for Christine.
Sure.
Christine, I curious question on the adjoining neighborhood plans. I know Government Hill has an approved neighborhood plan that kind of goes over some of your upper boundary area.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be incorporated into this downtown planning? And then second, the final approved document for the downtown Anchorage plan, will it through the planning zoning process and the assembly adoption, would that be the primary plan to go over or overlap on the Ship Creek area over Government Hills?
So Good question, Melinda. This is just the study area boundary. We're not proposing that this is the downtown plan boundary.
Got it.
Okay, so I think in the long run, if we hear from the public, we want this to actually be the downtown plan boundary, then we need to have that discussion with everybody further. Michelle, can you, if another plan gets adopted after a plan that's already adopted, that would kind of supersede what like the Government Hill plan says. But that wasn't our intent when we proposed this boundary up in this area. Part of the reason we propose the boundary up in this area is because we have truck traffic that is coming from Ship Creek and into downtown. And so there's a whole chapter, a transportation chapter within the downtown plan that talks about traffic. And so by including this a little bit northern area of Ship Creek within the study area boundary, we'll be bringing in some information from that truck traffic and the industrial properties that are there in the Ship Creek area. That's more the intent of this boundary.
Okay, so I think we have a bunch more that we need to get to. I think I want to close this part of the discussion by saying, I think we need to do a little bit more work to describe the difference between what is a planning area boundary and what is a study area boundary, and what the difference of those two things means for the implementation of the plan. So we'll do that, and we'll take all this information into consideration as those two areas get developed. Sylvia, I know you had one thing you wanted to say about the Downtown Community Council's position on the boundary, and maybe you can just add that as the final statement on this topic.
Well, thank you, Holly. I appreciate that. And I'll make it quick. The whole situation with the council, we have quite a few East Downtown members in our council meetings, and they're always, along with the radicals, the Third Avenue radicals, the development of East Downtown is really, really important as we see the difference between one side of downtown and the other. So Christine, in your map here, and your mapping, can you tell me, is there anything coming down with this, or are we going to be including more, to the East Downtown area? And if not, is that possible to add to it?
So Sylvia, the intent was to include East Downtown, the Third Avenue Radicals property, the Native Hospital site property. That's why we went all the way over to Ingra, and then we went up to Ship Creek. If you see the yellow boundary, that was the study area boundary from the 2007 plan. And so, because HLB Real Estate Department has completed that plan for the Native Hospital site, and then the redevelopment that the Third Avenue Radicals is wanting to make in their area, that's why we extended over to Ingra and then up into Ship Creek versus kind of avoiding that and cutting that in half.
Okay.
So if you could get input from the Downtown Community Council, and I'm going to be with you guys, I think the first week in February, we can talk about this and get their input and see if they think it needs to go over more east than Ingra there.
Thank you, Christine.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to move us along to vision and goals. Who doesn't love vision and goals, right?
Oh, good grief. It's 12:43.
I know.
Okay, so we wanted to present the vision and the overarching goals at this meeting. This is the vision from the downtown plan. It is intended to be visionary yet realistic, strategic, and action oriented. And they intended the downtown Anchorage to be a vibrant northern city center that serves all of Alaska and welcomes the world. Its unparalleled connection to nature and open spaces and its stunning views make downtown like no other urban environment. Residents and visitors are attracted to downtown's innovative urban design, creative use of sustainable technologies, and celebration of Alaska's unique culture. Downtown embraces a diverse concentration of people, employment, shopping, entertainment, government services, cultural facilities and events, public spaces, and housing. Downtown's comfortable and exciting pedestrian environment, inviting open spaces, events for families and children, and mix of cultural and entertainment facilities offer a refined urban living experience in the grandest of settings. I think it's a wonderful vision, but we do want you guys to think about it a little bit. This is an effort and an opportunity for the community to review and discuss the progress of the plan and the progress of this vision. Where are we at with it? We're going to talk a little bit about the overarching goals, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the strategy, framework, and design. So we'd like you all to think about the vision. Do we need to add to it? Is it good the way it is right now? Again, this is a targeted review, so we're focusing on certain elements of the plan. Does this still work for our downtown plan and for downtown Anchorage? This vision. All right, next slide. So the downtown plan also has some overarching goals. There's 6 of them, and I'm not going to read every single one of them, but number 1 implements implementation actions, LU 7 through 9, LU 11 through 13, LU 14, 15, and then I won't go through all of that, but anyway, there are 6 overarching goals. We need you to look at each of these overarching goals, but there's also various goals and recommendations in the different sections of the plan. So we would like you to look at all 6 of these goals in addition to the other goals that are included and recommendations in the different sections of the plan, and tell us, okay, those still work. Those are still going to get us where we need to go. With the pandemic, with all the other things that we feel that are issues happening with our downtown right now, these still work for us. Again, that targeted review, does what we have still work, and help us create what we need to bring forward as far as new recommendations and action items.
So I think I'm going to combine the discussion on the vision and goals and the strategy framework together, because I think they're ultimately linked throughout the implementation of the 2007 plan. So before we dive into any discussion about, is this still appropriate? Shanna, I'd like you to describe these 2 things that the downtown plan has now currently, which is this document, which is called the strategy framework, and this, which is called the strategy diagram. And I want you to set the context for these 2 diagrams, please, Shanna, and then we'll launch into a discussion about what, because this is the meat of it, right? Like, what does all this really mean for us now in 2021?
Sure, thanks, Holly. I mean, I think, you know, this diagram you're looking at really sets out the blueprint, almost like the to-do list of what were all the groups going to do since 2007 to make the vision and goals a reality and get our downtown in, you know, go headed in the right direction. And so those sort of salmon colored and yellow boxes, the opportunity sites and the catalytic development sites, I don't know that I have a good definition of the difference between the 2, except to think that the catalytics are just kind of larger, sort of more impactful projects potentially. You know, there's a need to kind of update that, because some of these have been done, there's been some other projects that have come in and been focused sort of on public-private partnerships and are moving forward. So that's something that either this group or the staff will kind of work towards getting just the text right, what needs to still be done. But the bigger question is, affirming the notion that identifying these development projects and these catalytic sites is in itself a strategy and that it's valuable, right? Like, yeah, whether or not we actually pick the exact projects to work on that folks from out of town identified in 2007 is maybe less important as the idea that we think it's important for public, quasi-public, and private entities to focus their efforts on getting some sites really moving forward. So that's kind of one question. Is that still important to do? And then the bottom third is these supporting strategies. And so, there's these broad categories of market, transportation, urban design, and overall programs. And I think that the chapter 8 of the plan really kind of provides specific, to-do items for each of those categories, but we really want to hear from you all. Is that the right list? What still needs to be done? Does there need to be more emphasis, for example, on focusing on the development code? Does there need to be more emphasis on safety and security, or things related to people experiencing homelessness in the downtown? And obviously with COVID as a new experience for us, is there more that needs to be said around small business support and small business development? So that's kind of the way that we might think about this strategy diagram as we kind of proceed with the process of working with you all. And I think maybe there's also opportunities for committees to work on different topics based on this diagram as well.
Holly?
Yeah, so understanding, this stepped approach, vision, goals, strategy, framework, strategy diagram. Let's launch into a final discussion here, and we'll start with Bill Pop. I know it's big. Yes, go ahead, and then we'll go to Bill.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks, Bill. So we wanted to just show you this raw as it is right now in the plan. Just so you know, in case you don't know, number 6 has been done. Number 7 has been done. Number 13 has been done. Number 14 has been done. Number 16 has been done. So basically those can come off the list. I did an evaluation of the other sites, and a lot of them are 6 parcels, 6 owners, and things like that, that maybe that wouldn't work. What we do know with a few good blocks is that area wasn't even included in this strategy diagram. And here we go, we're getting new housing in the few good blocks just right outside of here. Well, why did that happen? It was because of the public-private partnerships. So yeah, just take a look at this and, check it off and say, yeah, that still works, this still works, and then we need to add to it. I'll be quiet.
Go ahead, Bill.
I don't know quite how to articulate this within this particular presented structure, but I'll throw it out just to see if it has any legs. There is an inordinate amount of flat acreage in downtown that I think is a huge opportunity for development. It's a general condition. We have a substantially high proportion of flat, undeveloped dirt, other than unless you call simple parking lots development, which I think is a gross underutilization of some of our most valuable land in Anchorage from a taxable point of view, and the revenues that it could generate for the broader community. I'm not talking anything about eminent domain or any of those kinds of things. I'm just saying that it's an opportunity that I think needs to be invoked in the plan as something that needs to be pursued in terms of working with the property owners, working with different strategies to partner with them to see what we can do to convert a lot of that flat acreage into more efficient use of this very, very valuable land to our city.
What I'm hearing with that, Holly, is we need to incentivize land assembly. Some of these large parking lots are, 7, 8 parcels, 7, 8 different owners.
If I could also just mention, I'm not just picking on parking lots. There's flat acreage period that's like, vacant lots, which if you pay attention, you see them where buildings have been demolished. We actually have less structures in downtown today than we had 20 years ago.
Okay, go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, thanks. Just, a couple of things that I would add. We part of why I think Cook Inlet engaged in Elizabeth Place was not just because of the public-private partnership, but to sort of test what it was like to build downtown. And I think there's some learnings that come out of that from our project team. No doubt, Sean, as he goes through his process of both design and entitlements and then building, he'll discover what those problems are. And I don't know that we do really good postmortems on those projects to say like, hey, what worked, what didn't. And I can tell you, day 2 of our construction, the storm sewer that was supposed to be there wasn't there. Has there been an updated evaluation of our infrastructure in downtown? What's the issues that we have on some of our alleys and so forth that I think I've heard about as issues? Is that updated? That really is helpful to a developer potentially that then doesn't have to bear a surprise from what should be there from a pure utility standpoint. What are the development criteria that still requires private open space, when I argue that all of downtown is your private open space, is your open space? Why do you have to sort of put that on to the individual development? If you do actually go so far as to provide parking as a housing use, you have to provide head bolt heaters that you don't have to provide if you're building a commercial parking lot. So why is it? There's all kinds of things that we learn that are like little, but they add up to pretty enormous frustrations when you put a project together. And when when you bring them up, but then we all agree and sit around a table that, oh, I wish it was different. And then we don't actually follow through with the changing of those things downstream. So I would just add, reach out, engage, with project teams, find out what those problems were. Because once you then, whenever you've assembled that flat land and that vacant parcel and get ready to go, then in some ways, the fun part 2, that's when that starts. And if we haven't done anything different, what are we doing? So happy to engage or volunteer, our team, and hopefully, Sean, I know him, I think he'll be pretty forthcoming on what he finds to be frustrating through the process as well.
Okay. All right. Another idea for a committee, Christine.
Yep.
No, please don't put us on a committee. I think we just gather our information and then do something with it. That's what that's what we want.
Have you been on one of my committees?
And just thank you, Tyler, for saying that. And I think especially after Elizabeth Place, we were trying to identify projects, we being the planning department and development services, to have postmortems on. And you're correct, we haven't really followed through, especially with COVID and various things happening since Elizabeth Place. But maybe we won't ask you to be on a committee, but can I ask you to maybe join planning and development services and some of the other disciplines to have a conversation about that?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me. I mean, it's like a bad relationship, though. At some point, you don't want to think about it anymore, right? And so I think that's we need to build in better processes to like capture that stuff, put it in a parking lot, and put it on someone's to-do list to carry forward. Not so that it's when Sean goes into the building permit, stage, he gets hit with the same thing that we learned about 2 years from. So I'm not picking on you, Michelle. I'm just saying, what is it procedurally, process-wise, that we can sort of ongoing learn and do? It's like fix Title 21 as we find the problems, not in batches every 5 years. That's that's what I would sort of advocate for.
Yeah, no, understood. And I didn't think you were picking on me, but thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Andrew and then Eric. Go ahead, Andrew.
Great, thank you. A couple of things. I wanted to follow up on Bill's comments about the proliferation of flat land, especially surface parking lots. This feeds into the structural problem of developing downtown. I mean, it's just simply too expensive. And so if I own a flat piece of land, it makes more sense for me just to leave it flat, pave it over, and generate revenue through long-term and short-term parking downtown. I think a perfect example, and a very sad example, was 2 years ago when Diamond Parking tore down Phyllis's Salmon Bake in the adjacent little building next to it at the corner of 4th and D. And now you have a parcel of land that hosts 12 parking spaces, 1 block from a garage that has 1,000 parking spaces. I mean, we as a parking authority and as a development authority, have really, really been frustrated with this the last 6 years. I mean, Diamond has done this twice, where they have gone in and they have bought land and they have torn down buildings and they have brought in surface parking. Well, downtown Anchorage doesn't need any more surface parking. But the challenge to that is having the economic tools available. So if I own a flat piece of land and suddenly it's more beneficial for me to build housing than it is to keep 30 cars a month on there for short or long-term parking, then I'm going to do that. And the structural challenges in the financing challenges are so deep that even the deal we have with Sean that includes the 10-year tax abatement still wasn't enough to make the project pencil. So even all the good work we're doing now with the 10-year tax abatement for the core of downtown, that still is not enough to push a project over the edge. And we've talked to the city, we've talked to the mayor's office about the assembly issuing a moratorium on any more new surface parking lots downtown. We've talked in other communities. What they've done is they've created some kind of an incentive where, hey, if you want to leave it a flat parcel of land, that's fine, but you're going to get charged more because it's undeveloped and there's more potential. But again, in order to accomplish those, in order to have those policies that provide a lever, you have to have a release valve, which is the ability for these private individuals, these property owners, to develop into something other than parking. But it will continue to be a problem until we address the structural problems with funding and financing downtown housing and construction.
Thanks, Andrew. Go ahead, Eric.
Hi, guys. Yeah, I'm actually just want to second what Bill and Tyler were saying. And actually, Andrew, you covered a lot of what our issue. As you know, we were trying to work with Highport down on our 2nd Avenue of properties. We already have the land assembled. We have over an acre right on 2nd Avenue that should provide premium housing, which is what we do around town anyways. We have over 400 units just around town right now. And again, we're running into the cost barrier. It just the current rents and what it's cost to build downtown is making it so far economically unfeasible. So I'm really interested to see how this kind of flushes out, because I think where you're pointing is where we need to go. And I'm just I'm encouraging everyone to keep looking for the answer to this question.
Yeah, so I'd like to be able to weigh in. This is Alan, and just throw something on the table for people to be thinking about. That one of the challenges that we face, and I've heard oftentimes about the difficulty of using our current Title 21 code, that it raises costs so much because it's so prescriptive. And what the developer is to do with their structures and with the land that they're trying to develop. There's another technique though that you're seeing being put into place in a number of communities and cities in the lower 48, and that is rather than taking such a prescriptive approach, you step back and you become more interested, where the municipality and the city becomes more interested in the form, right? And so that it's because they're putting into place these form-based codes. So there's less emphasis on the prescriptive rules and regulations, but there's more emphasis on how that development looks and how it relates to the public realm, and that by shifting that you provide incentives for innovation on the part of the private sector, and you lower cost of development for that. So I would encourage folks to be thinking about this notion of moving away from the really heavily prescriptive current Title 21 approach to land use development, and moving more towards a form-based approach to regulating of the land use development, because I think it has a lot of merit here.
Okay, thank you. I think we've heard that a couple of times too. Simplify, simplify. Okay, we're over on time a little bit here. I guess any final comments? Anything anybody else wants to say? I mean, we could talk downtown for more time.
Well, just one thing, and that is for the recommendation of the boundary, I would offer that you take the central business district and then a 15-minute walk from the central business district would be the boundary. And a 15-minute walk is a 3/4 mile. So you just take that central business district outline, draw out a 3/4 mile radius, and then that's the boundary.
Got it.
Good
Okay,
idea.
we're gonna look at that. Okay, I want to pass it to Christine and or Michelle. Do you have anything else you want to say at the end here?
Are we going to go to the next steps? Yeah. Perfect. Thank you all for your comments and insight. We really appreciate it. Next steps is we may be reaching out to you to be on a subcommittee or interview you, follow up on what happened to you, like Tyler mentioned. We appreciate any kind of, input that you guys can give to us. We really need you to go to the website, www.ourdowntownaanchorage.com and register, because you will then get all kinds of different emails and notices by doing that. And then we can keep track of your participation. Be sure to tell your community councils, your business associates, everybody else that you come in contact with to go register. Like we said, we'll be having another public meeting in March, public meeting tonight, and then technical advisory committee meeting tomorrow. And I just want to acknowledge all the great work that you guys do. We wouldn't have our downtown if it wasn't for you guys and for the way that you care about our community. And I just want to thank you. Michelle?
I have nothing to add except for just wanting to express my appreciation for everybody who's joined today, and then for the team for the amazing presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, you know how to reach me if you need to follow up. If you didn't have the opportunity to say something today that you needed to say, please reach out to me and we can talk. Okay. All right. I appreciate everybody. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Shanna and Christine, can you just stay on, please?
I'm staying.
Will these slides be available to the steering committee?
Yeah, we'll make everything available. We'll put it on the website.
Okay, cool.